on.
Yo, shout the season, man. Shout the season, man.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Now, obviously, this is posting on a Wednesday morning. I usually post on Tuesdays, so a couple apologies from me right off the rip to all of you guys. I apologize for the episode being a little bit shorter than it usually is, and I apologize that this is a day late due to work and time constraints. Currently this week, I didn't have enough time to really dive deep into a longer episode and longer review like I typically like to do. So for today, obviously posting on a Wednesday morning, this is going to be a shorter episode, around 20 minutes long, which is not necessarily a bad idea. From time to time, I know a lot of people don't want to sit through 45 long minutes of an episode, but I really appreciate all the love and support. We are almost at 200 subscribers on YouTube, so keep liking, keep subscribing. This is your place to get your great college football and NFL news from. And, it was a crazy past Saturday. It really was. October 5th, 2024 was a ridiculous day for college football. And we're going to talk a little bit about it today. And I got two NFL stories we're going to talk about. I'll go over brief scores and, finals from the NFL on October 6th, on Sunday, October 6th. But we're really going to talk about all the upsets that happen in college football first and foremost. But as you all know, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32. Get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So without any more delay, let's get right into it. So Saturday, October 5th, 2024, we had 4 of the top 11 teams in the country lose, and some lost in embarrassing fashions, and some lost in, close games, if we're being honest. But there's one game we're really going to get into, and that is the Alabama Crimson Tide coming in high right after beating Georgia, the number 1 team in the nation at that point, or number 2 at that point. I don't remember. Georgia was number 2 2 weeks ago. So Alabama, they're riding high. Freshman sensation Ryan Williams is lighting it up on the stat sheet. Jalen Milroe, front runner for the Heisman Trophy. It looked like Alabama was going to be cruising to the SEC championship, possibly, because the SEC is going to be a dogfight, especially after what happened this past weekend. But how about the Vanderbilt Commodores upsetting number 1 Alabama 40-35 in Vanderbilt? Diego Pavia for Vanderbilt honestly might be one of the most underrated and underappreciated quarterbacks in the entire country. Undersized, but he can sling the rock, and he has tremendous poise when the pressure's on. He laid the wood to Alabama. If we're being honest, Vanderbilt, I know the score was real close, but let me tell you, I have never seen an Alabama defense play so poorly. I don't think ever. The last time I remember seeing Alabama, at least personally, with a game that I watched, the last time I saw Alabama play this poorly was against Clemson with Trevor Lawrence in the national championship game, where Clemson, I believe, won 41-14 and made Alabama look completely stupid and silly on the field. But now the tables have turned. Now, I'm for one, it's clear the Nick Saban era is over in Alabama, because no matter what, I like Kalen DeBoer, former coach for Washington, first time coaching at Alabama now in his first season. I like Kalen DeBoer, but Nick Saban never lost to Vanderbilt, and he never would have lost this game. Here's the thing. It seemed to me that Bama was not buttoned up properly after beating Georgia. They're riding high. You got news in the media. You got Kalen DeBoer going on talk shows. You got, Jalen Milroe making appearances and stuff. Here's the thing. Nick Saban would have got in that team's ass after the Georgia game and told them straight up, It's time to lock in again. Don't let this Vanderbilt team be the one that beats you. Nick Saban never would have lost to Vanderbilt, but Kalen DeBoer did. And honestly, this might be the most loose Alabama team I think I've ever seen, at least in the past 20 years. So if you really think about it, Vanderbilt, obviously massive underdog against number 1 Alabama. But here's the craziest statistic of them all. Vanderbilt was 0-60 all time against the AP top 5. Any team that was in the top 5, Vanderbilt lost to. They were 0-60 going into this game. Now they are 1-60 as the Vanderbilt Commodores upset Heisman hopeful Jalen Milroe and SEC favorites, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Other games we got going on this past weekend: Ohio State handles Iowa 35-7. Number 4, Tennessee, with Nico Iamaleava at quarterback, fall to the Arkansas Razorbacks 19-14. So Tennessee was also hyped up to be one of many teams that are going to be competing for the SEC and national championship this year. Well, guess what? Arkansas had different plans. The way the SEC is shaping up, it's actually ridiculous that Texas A&M is actually in the forefront of the SEC. And speaking of Texas A&M, they ended up beating number 9 Missouri, but this wasn't even close. 41-10. The Texas A&M Aggies literally put belt to ass on the Missouri Tigers. I couldn't believe this. But I kind of knew and kind of figured that it might happen just because people wanted to talk about Miami's schedule, but they keep winning. But we will talk about Miami Cal real soon. But people want to talk about other teams' schedule being soft. What about Missouri's paper-thin schedule? I have no idea why they were ranked number 9 in the first place. I don't know why they were ranked that high. But again, that's why I'm not a member of the college football committee or the college football board, whoever decides these rankings, because Missouri at 9 clearly is one of the biggest indictments on the entire SEC, because I fall into the hype about Missouri. I fall into the hype that they could possibly squeak their way into the SEC championship and screw up the college football playoff for a lot of other teams like a Texas, like a BAMA, a Georgia, an Ole Miss. So Texas A&M just laid the wood to Missouri this past weekend. Let's see what else we got. Washington avenges their national championship loss last year to the Michigan Wolverines, winning 27-17. Here's the thing about Michigan. They have no sense of offense. They have no sense of quarterback play. Donovan Edwards literally is a non-factor. At least I haven't heard his name much. I mean, he had 95 rushing yards in this game and a touchdown, but you have to have a quarterback that can at least throw the ball somewhat. Michigan's quarterback play is absolutely god-awful. Michigan's quarterback play is so inept, you might as well give me a helmet and shoulder pads, and I can go out there and do what all these Michigan quarterbacks are doing. And I'm no quarterback. I took one snap at quarterback in my entire life when I played high school football, from pee-wees all the way through high school. I took one snap at quarterback, and that was a JV game where our quarterback had to come out because he was hurt. So they stuck me behind there, and all I did was catch the ball and hand off a jet sweep. That went for a touchdown, by the way. So, I think that's kind of funny. But either way, I took one snap at quarterback my entire life. I could do what Michigan quarterbacks are doing right now. So number 10, Michigan falls to Washington 27-17. And then the other shocker to me, Minnesota upsetting USC 24-17. Now, Michigan's a 2-loss team and USC is a 2-loss team. Why is Michigan still in the top 25? I really don't understand that. They're the only 2-loss team in the top 25 right now. And that bugs me. That really bugs me because, it's smearing a bunch of other teams that, have earned it, in my opinion. So I don't like the fact that Michigan is still in the top 25. But like I said, Minnesota upsetting number 11 USC 24-17. This is one thing we've always talked about Lincoln Riley teams. They're always okay on offense, except when they go up against a good defense. They kind of struggle with those top-tier defenses, but it's not like Minnesota's a world beater. Minnesota is 3-3 on the season. They're nothing special. But I like PJ Fleck. Coach PJ Fleck at Minnesota knows how to coach. He's one of the most undervalued and underappreciated head coaches in all of college football, in my opinion. Whenever there's a big game, Minnesota always seems to show up and at least play hard. If they don't win the game, they play hard. But Minnesota got the job done this time. Next game, we're going to talk about Clemson beating Florida State 29-13. Now, plenty of people were talking about how Clemson's been so dominant in recent weeks, which, okay, I see that. They did not necessarily play that well against Florida State. I know they won 29-13, but I will say they looked very, very sloppy. They're not the world beaters in the ACC that a lot of people think. I value a lot of the thoughts and opinions on the analytic people and all the other college football commentators around the country, like A. Joel Klatt, Colin Cowherd, Nick Saban, everybody on College Game Day, Herb Street, Fowler, Reese Davis, all those guys. Because I get good insight, and that's how I choose to run my channel, at least, in the sense of how they, dive into the game aspect. But when it comes to Clemson, I didn't really see too much out of them. Obviously, I think now that Miami has always had me nervous these past couple of weeks. We're going to talk about them next. And actually, in like 2 minutes, we'll talk about them. But here's the thing about Clemson. They're not the world beaters that people think they're going to be. I mean, they're a slow boiling team. Slow broil. Now they're getting hot. They kind of struggled against Florida State. If anybody watched that game, you can see, how sloppy Clemson was. But it's Florida State, so obviously they made up for it. DJ Ungalale is out for the rest of the year, having surgery. So Florida State's turning to Brock Glenn, backup quarterback. It's just a mess in Tallahassee. It really is. And again, I'm a Mike Norvell fan, so I think he will right the ship. It probably won't be this year, but I think it will be next year. Even after the game, I watched Dabo Swinney and Mike Norvell talking. For a fact that Dabo Swinney has utmost respect for Mike Norvell. I think he was telling him, like, this ain't on you. Like, this is the players. And I'm a firm believer of that. So, obviously, I wanted a quarterback change for Florida State just because I thought that's the necessary route they had to take. So, finally, it happened in the most unprecedented way. I don't wish injury on anybody, but it was time to move off of DJU. And it's unfortunate that was the reason they had to move off him because of injury and how much money they're paying him and so on and so forth. But Brock Glenn ends up taking snaps for Florida State against Clemson. They did not get the job done. Ashton Jeanty continued his dominance against Utah State. 13 carries, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Ashton Jeanty, the best running back in college football by a country mile. Through the first 6 weeks, for the first 5 weeks for Boise State, they're 4-1. Through the first 5 weeks, Ashton Jeanty already has over 1,000 rushing yards and 16 touchdowns, I believe. Yeah, 16 touchdowns and less than 100 carries. That's better than Barry Sanders' start to the 1988 season. Ashton Jeanty's on his way to having a Barry Sanders-like season. And then Louisville gets upset by SMU, which SMU is now in the top 25, And then one more we're going to talk about is the Miami Hurricanes. I fell asleep during this game, so I didn't even get to watch the immaculate comeback. Cam Ward, again, sensational in the second half and especially the fourth quarter. 437 yards passing and 2 touchdowns and another rushing touchdown. Here's the thing about the Miami Cal game. Cal people, Cal fans, everybody, they want to yell and complain about the non-targeting call at the end of the game or the Cam Ward possibly being over the line of scrimmage, which he wasn't. He needed his full body across the line of scrimmage for it to be a penalty. Anybody who watches football knows that. But here's the thing. Cal had a 25-point lead. I just got done a week ago saying you should not leave the game in the officials' hands at the end. That's a recipe for disaster. And guess what? It was for Cal. They had a 25-point lead, and they blew it. They blew it. Don't complain about officiating when you were up by You're up by 4 scores. It's a 4-score game. And you blew it. That's the end of it. Cam Ward, easily best quarterback in college football. I don't think it's arguable at this point. I really don't. Front runner for the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion. But Cal having a 25-point lead, they did all that talking during the game, and then everybody wants to feel bad for Cal after the fact. Well, guess what? You left the game in the hands of the officials, and guess what? It came back to bite you. It doesn't always go that way. And stop saying agenda this, agenda that. I'm not a fan of officials, I'm not a fan of cross-conference officiating, like ACCs. Some schools, they get ACC officials. Like, it makes no sense. I think there should be a set standard for officials, like a college football-wide, staff, not just conferences, because it opens up the door for bias. It really does. I understand that. But here's the thing. Like, moral of the story, Cal had a 25-point lead against the Hurricanes. They blew it. That is not the fault of the officials. That's not the fault of the officials whatsoever. Going forward, Miami is still my favorite to win the ACC. It'll be close with Clemson. Obviously, it's a Miami and Clemson race at this point in the ACC. We get all that. But moral of the story, Cam Ward, no lead is safe with Cam Ward at the quarterback position. So obviously the AP Top 25 released. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Oregon. Number 4, Penn State. Number 5, Georgia. Number 6, Miami. 7, Bama. 8, Tennessee. 9, Ole Miss. 10, Clemson. I would switch Ole Miss and Clemson. I think Clemson would beat Ole Miss. And we're going to talk a little bit about NFL. Not too much. I know I'm running a little short on time today. But here's a couple things. There's a couple things I wanted to talk about, at least when it comes to NFL. Mainly 2 games. Mainly 2. So the Jets lose to the Vikings 23-17. And the word around New York is, fire Robert Saleh. This coaching staff's got to go. It's time to make a change. That is the most naive position you can take right now, in my opinion. If you are a Jets fan or someone who's an NFL fanatic and wants to see just the Jets do better. Here's the thing about Coach Robert Saleh. He has the defense right. He's good on his side of the ball. He held the Vikings, which has been the best offense in all of the NFL right up to this point. He held them basically to virtually nothing in the second half. 6 points in the second half. The Vikings only scored 23 points. The Jets were in this. They scored 17. This is on Aaron Rodgers. You wanted Nathaniel Hackett as your OC. You wanted Alan Lazard as your safety net because you love comfort. You love familiarity. Well, Aaron Rodgers really struggled in this game. 29 of 54, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions. That's not going to get it done for the Jets. And now everybody wants to blame Robert Saleh for this loss. Everybody wants to start pointing the finger at Robert Saleh. My whole thing if you are a head coach in the NFL, now a lot of people want offensive-driven teams. I do too. I wish Pittsburgh was like that. But if you are a defensive head coach, no matter whatever side of the ball your specialty is in the NFL as a head coach, do you have your side of the ball right? Do you have your side of the ball that you have studied for years and know inside and out? Do you have that side of the football right? Well, the Jets have a great defense, a fantastic defense. Tell me if you've heard this before. Jets have a good defense, but an inept offense. Sounds like the story over the past 12 years with the New York Jets. The last offense I remember the Jets having that was somewhat okay was with Mark Sanchez and Santonio Holmes and an old LaDainian Tomlinson back in 2011 when they went to the AFC Championship for the last time. The only thing good about the Jets is their defense, and that's on Robert Saleh. That's the only good thing about their defense, about their entire team, is their defense. Now you want to get rid of the guy who has made that defense great and hard to move on? So you just want to create more chaos for the New York Jets. Like they haven't had enough chaos since Joe Namath won Super Bowl III. Like, the Jets haven't had enough chaos over the past 20 years. Really? You want to get rid of Robert Saleh, the guy who is actually held? He did fantastic against the Vikings. I watched part of that game. It looked like Sam Darnold was going back to his old form. He didn't look like the MVP quarterback that everybody's hyping him up to be. And I still like Sam Darnold. But that just goes to show you how good the Jets' defense is. Their offense is just inept. And they have a stubborn quarterback who is too obsessed with comfort and is a little bit prickly, if we all get it. If we all know how feisty he is. But when things don't go his way, that's when Aaron Rodgers is at his worst, in my opinion. But there's no reason that Robert Saleh should be... Now, does he share some of the blame? Yes, of course he does. But he's not the one who drafted Zach Wilson. He's not the one who hired Nathaniel Hackett. That GM and that owner is the blame for that. Here's another thing that I saw recently. Well, heard recently. Especially on the herd with Colin Cowherd, excuse me. I think it's through the first 5 weeks of last season and this season. When Zach Wilson was at quarterback last season and Aaron Rodgers this season, the Jets have scored 95 points. And I think that's the exact same as last year. If I remember correctly, it was 95 points. But either way, last year up to this point and this year up to week 5, they have been virtually identical. Robert Saleh is not the problem. It's the offense. And Robert Saleh is not the one who hired Nathaniel Hackett. I'm sorry. This is on Aaron. This loss is on Aaron Rodgers. Now, one more story we're going to talk about in the NFL. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I was at this game. I got absolutely drenched. But I was at this game. Final score 20-17. I forgot about the final score for a second. But obviously, Pittsburgh loses to an inept Cowboys team that's reeling. Go figure, Pittsburgh handed Dallas a win. That's nothing new. Here's my whole thing. Pittsburgh, they're good to a fault on their defense. They really are. That's their biggest strength, but now it's becoming an issue at the same time because they constantly rely on said defense to win them games when that can't happen in the NFL anymore. You need to have a potent offense. Pittsburgh's offense looks like a damn BB gun. I know I like George Pickens. I like Calvin Austin. I like Scotty Miller. I like Pat Freiermuth, Warren, Harris, Washington. I like all those guys on our offense. The offensive line is still a mess. The offensive line is still kind of trash. There's no run game to be heard of. Pittsburgh needs another weapon for Justin Fields. I'm sorry, this game was not on Justin Fields. He's handicapped. He put the ball in places for his receivers to catch him. They didn't. And people are talking about around for the Pittsburgh media and stuff like, will Russ finally play? Like, why would you bench Fields for something that's not his fault? I don't like Arthur Smith I know he made Ryan Tannehill a Pro Bowler, but he's not that good of an OC. I'm watching our offense. Justin Fields is putting the ball in places that it needs to be. He has 2 turnovers on the entire year. Don't blame Justin Fields for all of this. Pittsburgh's defensive culture, offensive line issues they've been known for damn near a decade. There's a reason Pittsburgh hasn't been considered, there's a reason they haven't been taken serious over the past 5 years. At least towards the back end of, Ben Roethlisberger's career. But you went up against a Dallas team that could not run the football. No DeMarcus Lawrence. No Micah Parsons. A Dak Prescott who's being slammed in the media and overhyped. And on a 4th down and goal, you blew it. To a fault, Pittsburgh, listen, to Pittsburgh's credit, they're tough, they're physical. Their defense is always great. But to a fault, the problem is they rely on it too much. And that is just not sustainable in the NFL. I want Pittsburgh to go trade for Devontae Adams. They need another weapon, like something special on the offense. I think George Pickens will get there, but he's still growing. He's still learning. He'll get there eventually, but Pittsburgh needs something else on offense. Something has to change because this was almost a surefire win for Pittsburgh. Again, you got a Dallas team that can't run the football, is reeling, is struggling mightily to stop the run. No Micah Parsons, no DeMarcus Lawrence, and yet you gave him the game. It's a steal away, apparently. Enough with the winning season stuff. We need a different standard. Super Bowls. That's it. That's it. So Pittsburgh blows it on the final play, basically on the final play of the game, losing to Dallas 20-17. And that's going to wrap it up this week on the Lake Show, everyone. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again, and I apologize about the shorter episode, but this will be out on Wednesday morning. Again, I apologize for all the time constraints this week, but we will be back full force next week with college football and NFL. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the